Hey Ben, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm okay. It's really hot in Austin. What city are you in right now?
I'm currently in Nashville, Tennessee,
Okay. It's a great
and
city.
also very hot here.
I bet. All right. So I did prepare a couple questions and I appreciate you hopping on like so quickly after reaching out today or whenever. I know there's some delays, but that's okay.
Oh, no
Um,
worries.
Anyway, so I kind of am hoping for you to get it started with kind of describing what it is exactly that you do and your current kind of gig that you're on.
Okay, yeah. So I don't even know what my official title would be
Mhm.
for the company that I work for, but I'm a lighting technician and production technician. So basically, I am hired by a band through the company I work for to come into their production team and
Mhm.
and set up their shows and go on tour with them. Uh, yeah.
That makes sense. And currently, you mentioned this to me earlier, you're working with Panic at the Disco.
Yes.
And you are, so you're going on tour with them.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be on the road with them, going like doing all their shows with them. Yeah, the in and out of every day. For the next about 2 months. I Our last show is gonna be October 26th. So I'm with
Got
them.
it.
Then.
So well, okay. So before I get into that actual kind of experience you're about to have, could you kind of just talk about how you found yourself in this role? Like what steps kind of took place or for you to like kind of jump in this role? And was it like intentional? Did you know you were just gonna go into lighting and like stuff like that beforehand?
Um, it's funny, I wasn't actually that into lighting. So when I was in high school, I went to Bowie
Mhm.
and I was the head technician there. And so I always
Got
did
it.
stuff with theater production and technical
Mhm.
production and all of that. Um, and the company that I used to work for before I started touring would help set up the dance show there every year, and I just kind of kept helping them every time they showed up, and come my senior year, I was like, okay, well, I kind of need a job, and I know how to do some lighting, and so
Mhm.
I was fortunate enough to get a job kind of right out of high school, and obviously with COVID, um, productions and shows all stopped, and I was fired for the better part of 2 years,
Mhm.
and actually stepped away from anything to do with lighting for a while, and then I was kind of on a whim. My brother called me about 21 Pilots, and he
Yeah.
got an offer for it, and that was sometime last June, and he was telling me that he couldn't actually go on it, and um, I was wanting to really get back into the technical production, and so I was like, hey, just tell him that I'm available and interested, and um, fortunately enough, about 2 weeks later, I got the call that I got the show, and ever since then, I've been touring. So
Wow. Okay. So there's
it
a
was
lot to
a combination of right time, right place, and knowing what I am capable of, and saying, okay, I'm here. Let me be a part of your show.
Yeah. And it certainly seems like it. I know like the thing you mentioned about like you were at like that show. So like at your high school, they had done that show and every year you would help out. That's like something that's like a similarity I definitely drew to other people, specifically like who've also kind of been on that like entertainment side that I've talked to on this podcast because a lot of upfront work is usually free because you do have to prove it to like them, I guess, or whoever you're trying to work for to a certain extent. So was it more of like you reaching out at the end of your senior year and be like, hey, like I've helped y'all, like y'all have seen what I've done. Could I have a job? Or was it like they like reached out to you?
Uh, it was actually kind of both. So the main guy that I always worked with, he would come every year, and so he and I had
Mhm.
built up quite a good like, oh, nice to see you again type
Yeah.
friendship, where it
Yeah.
was like, how you been? We'd catch up every time, and the
Mhm.
last time I was kind of like, I'm really uh really had no idea what I was going to do after I
Mhm.
graduated, and knew that I needed to figure it out quickly, and knew that I was passionate about that type of work. And so
Yeah.
he was like, "If you're looking for a job," and I was like, "Well, I kind of am," and it all kind of played out perfectly.
That does sound pretty perfect. So I guess during COVID, that makes sense that there wasn't a lot of work to do. So after that, and you've mentioned like Imagine, did you say Imagine Dragons?
No,
Um,
21
sorry,
Pilots.
so I don't know why. 21
Yeah.
Pilots. Yeah, they're kind of the same. No, I'm just kidding. Like what was that like with like you said your brother got the contract first and then he like handed it off to you. Could you kind of walk us through like how that actually came about and like kind of were you like excited? Like was it like
Oh,
insane or what?
um, yeah. So my brother does the same thing I do. He and I are both
Okay.
lighting technicians, and we
Mhm.
work for the same company. We don't actually see each other very frequently. Our tours often don't
Yeah.
cross paths. So I actually just saw him for the first time in about 6 months, about a month.
Wow.
So
Uh-huh.
it's a very you're always gone and you're always doing something. But he called me up, and it was funny. He was actually rubbing it in my face
Mhm.
when he called about the 21 Pilot story. He was like, "Guess who I'm about to go on tour with that you don't get to," because he knew that I
Yeah.
was a fan. Um, and back in high school, and to this
Mhm.
day, really. And that's part of the reason I was like, I will quit my job right now to go.
Yeah.
If you need somebody, I will go right now.
Mhm.
And and when I found out that I got it, I was actually in a car with a bunch of my good friends on our way to Denver, Colorado,
Mhm.
and I saw the number pop up on my phone, and it clicked on like who was calling me, and I told everyone like stop, like turn off the music, everyone stop talking for five
Yeah.
minutes. This is roll up the windows, and and they called, and I tried to sound as professional as possible, of course,
Yeah.
and like wasn't freaking out inside. Um and they said, "Hey, like, so are you still interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, like downplaying the
Uh-huh.
excitement." And essentially they told me like my start date and everything, and I hung up the phone, and I all my buddies, I looked at them, I said, "I got it," and all of us just like freaked out. It
Wow.
was a really wonderful moment, actually.
That does sound like a pretty cool moment.
And that
Um,
was the start to everything. So
okay, so now we're at the point where you've gotten it confirmed that you are kind of going on tour with 21 Pilots. Could you talk about like the first show that you did and like kind of what it was that you were doing specifically for them?
yeah, so um the my actual job on that tour, I was running a what's called a robo spot, which is basically a fancy term for a spotlight. But
Okay.
uh, the but that was just during the show. Prior to the show, I actually helped build the entire rig from the ground up.
Oh,
So
wow.
we go in. We were a team of six, I believe, on that tour,
Mhm.
and the six of us, all from the same company, would go in at like about 6 a.m. every day,
Wow.
um, and all the gear would show up, and we would take it in. We'd have a lot of stage hands, which are local workers basically that help us, and we explain to them what needs to be done.
Mhm.
And one piece at a time, quite literally, it's built and hung and sent up into the air.
What was the rig for that? Like what was the actual like kind of set for that tour that you were building?
That tour was pretty sizable, to say the least.
Mhm.
It was a bunch of trussing, which is the structure that you hang a light on, and it was a bunch of towers, and trussing over the stage, and then
Okay.
it also had five fingers that kind of jetted out over the audience, and for reference,
Interesting.
the shortest one was 40 feet long, the longest
Jesus Christ.
one was about 90, and those were
Wow.
about 60 feet in the air. So I mean, it's a
Interesting.
big. You get to see you when you walk into an arena. It's empty. It's just this
Yeah.
big empty room, and I mean, there's nothing.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it's like a basketball court. It's just
Yeah.
ground and there's seats around it. There's nothing.
Do you know? I'll like try to pop up a picture of it, honestly. What was the tour called?
It was the Takeover tour.
Okay,
It was
interesting.
2021.
That's
Um,
really cool.
I have a ton of pictures too, which I'm happy
Yeah.
to share.
No,
Um,
that would be awesome. What like was there ever a time that you could remember where like something went wrong? Like whether that's during or before and you're kind of like freaking out? Like what was it?
so my other job, and this
Mhm.
is just my job, and that has to do with my age. The older people on the crew typically don't have this job,
Uh-huh.
is quite literally climber. And so if there's ever an issue that's up in the rig, I put on a harness and I climb
Wow.
a rope ladder to the
Uh-huh.
rig, and I go out to the issue and I fix it in the air because it's
Uh-huh.
too big to pull down just for one little
Yeah.
prop. And actually, our first day, our first load in um, of the show,
Uh-huh.
it, I'll give you some context here. A load in is supposed to take maybe 6 hours. Like
Uh-huh.
that's solid load in time. Um, that's if everything goes well. This load in took us about 13 hours. Um, and we actually had to delay the start of the show.
Wow.
And that's because I spent 3 hours climbing around the rig. I was up in it, just drenched and trying and chasing down every little problem we could find. And
Oh
that's
my
just
God.
how it is at the beginning of a tour. Is you work out all the kinks
Hmm.
early on, and as it progresses, it gets smoother and smoother. And hopefully, by the last show, you have an idea of actually what you're doing there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So where was like this first show?
That show would have been. Oh, where was it? Where did we start? Denver. We started in Denver,
Denver.
Colorado, and that was our first arena show. And uh, what was cool about that tour, and not a lot of tours do this, is
Hmm.
we actually spent a week in every city. And
Oh wow.
the first night in the city, we would do a bar show, just a little, very
Uh,
intimate, maybe 150 people in the crowd max.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the next night, we would do a club, and there'd be 300 people, and the set would be a little bit bigger. And then the third night, it was a theater, and there's 1,000 people, and the
Hmm.
set got pretty sizable. And by the fourth night, the arena night, there's 15,000 people,
Hmm.
and it's a full show. Every
Wow.
piece of each show combined to make the whole thing. And so that's why it was called the Takeover. Is basically they were emulating starting from scratch and
Yeah.
to the size they were. It
Wow.
was really fun and cool tour to be a part of.
Yeah, that does sound really cool. So you would do this in every city that you went to, like more or less?
Yep.
Oh wow. So how many cities total was that
So
first
that
21
tour, that
class?
tour was about 6 cities, I think. It
Okay.
was that, which isn't that many for a tour, but
Mhm.
because of the style that it was, it's
Yeah.
still a 6 week tour. I feel like that doesn't sound right, um but it was the cities we did go in were really fun too, and it
Got
was my
it.
first time in a lot of them.
Yeah,
We went
that
to
sounds really
Denver,
fun.
LA, Chicago, Boston, a lot of
Mhm.
big cities, so it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
So which one would you say like was your favorite? Whether that's like from the crowd or just like personal, like which one did you like the most?
Uh, I particularly remember the Forum in LA,
Okay, nice.
which it being like my first tour, I was just excited to be working in the
Hmm.
Forum. It's a
Yeah,
very venue,
it's
and what
legendary. Yeah.
everyone has worked there. Um, and I remember standing. I stand to the backstage, but you can see the whole audience from
Hmm.
there. And I was just staring out and seeing people that paid a lot of money to be there for one
Yeah.
thing.
Uh-huh.
But more importantly, they came to the show to experience it one time.
Yeah.
And they sat there and they're watching the show, and to them this is the huge production that's all mysterious
Hmm.
and just to some of the diehard fans, like this really magical moment of their life.
Yeah.
And and I was sitting there and I was looking at them, and there was this little kid down front, and I was staring at him, and I was like, this kid's gonna remember this moment for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just another day of work,
Yeah.
and that was when it clicked, like how much I enjoyed it, and realized the size and scope of what it was that I was doing, and I was really thankful to be a part of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I know for like certain concerts that I've been to where like I really enjoy the artists, those are like still things I like remember, but like exactly as you said, like that's just another day for the artist and like the entire crew. That's really interesting. So after like let's say so the tour's wrapping up, like what happens like right after the tour? What were kind of like your main reflections on it and like where do you go from there?
Well, right after the tour, it's kind of hard actually to readjust after a tour
Hmm.
to going home. You know, you when you are on tour, you're flown or drove everywhere.
Yeah.
You have a schedule every day. You're
Mhm.
fed 3 times a day. It's very structured,
Yeah.
very. And then you're excited every day. It's new. You're in a new place. You're meeting hundreds of new people a day,
Hmm.
seeing thousands of new people a day, and then you go home and you go, okay, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
home now. And it is a hard adjustment. Um, there's this thing called a post-tour depression.
Hmm.
Basically, it's like you go home and everything feels very uneventful.
Yeah.
Uh, but separate from that, you you also spend months with these people on this crew that all came from different companies, different like the band, you know, you meet all these fun, cool people who do different positions on the tour. There's sound people, there's light people, there's video,
Yeah.
and you become a traveling family for sure. Like I mean,
Hmm.
you see them day and night, you live with them on a tour bus, etc. And then the tour ends, and you might never see them again. You say,
Wow.
it was good working with you.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anyone from that tour since.
Wow.
It's just that's just the nature of it. Um, and it's the same with every tour. Every tour you meet these new people. That was a crew of almost, I think it was with the band and all of their people. It was 90 people
Hmm.
um, that you see day in and day out. And then on my next tour, it was James Taylor. I toured with him
Oh, nice.
over the summer, and he was 40 people that I got to know very well and loved dearly. Haven't seen any of them since, but you keep in touch, and but you all kind of go your separate ways, and
Yeah.
anyone who works in this industry is technically a subcontractor. You
Hmm.
once the tour's over, you go, okay, I need to find my next one
Yeah.
uh, to continue to get paid, to continue to work.
Hmm.
So if you're lucky, you just kind of keep going. And I've been fortunate this year to just kind of keep that momentum going. And so it was I did that one. I was off for a while, started James Taylor, went to Stevie Nicks, and now I'm out with Panic at the
Oh,
Disco.
wow. So this is like your fourth one right now that you're on?
Yep, this will be my fourth tour
Okay.
in a year.
So does it ever get old? Like, I mean, you're traveling with amazing artists with probably huge fan bases. Is it ever like, do you ever just get kind of tired of it? Or do you think like this is kind of like you're happy to do this like kind of for a while?
It's kind of a loaded question, I would say.
Uh,
Because yes, you can get tired, especially if your crew you don't necessarily get along with your crew,
yeah.
which happens a lot. And things like that, or if the band you're with is not that exciting to you. Um, Fortunately, I haven't really had those experiences too much yet, but I'm sure my time is coming. Um, it's definitely possible to get tired of it and get maybe not of the job, but tired of the tour you're on or
Hmm.
where you are or what you're doing on a tour. Um, the nature of tours changes a lot. Older, more professional tours that have been doing it for decades, like James Taylor, that was a breeze. It was easy. Everyone knew
Yeah.
what they were doing. They had such a well done tour. Everyone was so professional. 21 Pilots, I would never speak bad about them for a second, but that one was chaotic. I mean,
Really?
oh yeah, you're moving around. It's a younger camp. A lot of
Uh,
people that a lot of their main crew, the stage manager, production manager, that the heads were friends of theirs,
uh-huh.
uh, that they kind of just let fall into those positions. And so
Yeah,
sometimes maybe they don't quite know what to do, and so it would make things hard sometimes. But
that makes
uh,
sense.
you can get tired of it. But I would also say that it's just an exciting job. With how new everything is every day,
Mhm.
it kind of keeps it fresh the whole time.
That makes sense. Would you say like what is kind of would you say is like the long-term goal with this gig that you have? Like, is this something like potentially so you're hired by like a company that then gets contracts and gives them to you? Like, would you want to take over like that type of role where you start your own, or like do you just think like for like the future it's kind of just lighting for now? Or like do you ever see yourself pivoting?
Um, so there's kind of a hierarchy
Mm,
to lighting, and any technical side that kind of goes through being the climber and the tech to being the front of house technician, the people that run the show that you
mhm.
see at that little uh blocked off area in the middle of the crowd.
Yeah.
That's kind of the step up, which I'm slowly pivoting into. But then beyond that, there's a position called an LD, which is a lighting designer slash director.
Mhm.
Um, and they kind of they build the show virtually and
Mhm.
with the artist. They work directly with the artist with
Interesting.
everything,
Yeah.
uh, and basically create the vision with the artist of what the
Mhm.
show's going to look like. They build it with CAD drawings and things,
Yeah.
and then they get to be on the tour and maybe run the show, or just say, hey, do that and this, and tell you what to do, and don't have to
Mhm.
do anything. One day I'm hoping to be in that position. I'm learning all the things that job requires.
Mhm.
Um, but that's down the road. I am enjoying my position now and kind of soaking it up while I can, and
That
all the
makes
perks
sense.
that come with it.
Mhm.
Um, but personally, my eventual goal is to be in a band. To be the guy getting lit, but it's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Well, I hope both of those kind of paths work out for you. Would you, is there any advice you'd give to someone who's interested in like the entertainment side of like, or like the technical side of entertainment, whether that's music or something else that you think worked for you and like could work for others who might be listening?
Yeah, I would say to always hop on an opportunity that comes your way,
Hmm.
even if it's not necessarily in the trajectory of where you're trying to go.
Hmm.
Having another notch in your belt is more important than sometimes what you know. And um, even the educational side of this industry, like a lot of productions won't look at your formal education side. They'll look at what you've done, the
Mm.
things, the people you know is a big one. Network
Yeah.
like crazy. Um, but just anything you can do to say, oh yeah, at one point I was doing this. The
Yeah.
right person will hear you and see you, and you'll keep moving, and never stop expanding what you know, never stop learning, as cliche as that is. That is
Mhm.
really important, is to always, every show you do, you're going to be presented with something you haven't worked with, or someone who knows something that you've never
Mhm.
heard of, and that's why they're doing what you want to do. And so just always learning that next step is a big thing.
Got it. That makes sense. I think that's really good advice too. And I like draw parallels to that. I've like heard other people say that as well. Um, I think those were kind of all my questions. So now I guess I'll kind of just hand it over to you. If you have any like plugs or any parting advice or whatever you want to say for like this last part, now's your chance.
Hmm, that's I don't have much, I will say, but I would say that I think sometimes people glamorize things
Mhm.
a little bit more than they are. Um, and to anyone that is starting this kind of job, yes, it does have a lot of fun sides to it, but it's also a very physical job, a very
Yeah.
demanding job. And so, as much as I would love to say that I'm always out partying or always out having a good time or meeting all
Mhm.
these people, and yes, all that does happen. It's also a job, and you are working, and there's a certain level of professionality that I think a lot of people believe it lacks.
Yeah.
But it's really it to the people that are interested in it, I would say don't let that deter you either, because it's a job that sometimes you'll sit back and go, I don't have much room to complain at
Mhm.
the end of the day.
Yeah.
I could be doing a lot of other things that are a lot less fulfilling, and I'm really thankful for the job I do have.
Brilliant. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Ben. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I appreciate